Spooky season is finally here, so today we're going to be making this macrame ghost pixel wall hanging. Now, this is an easy to moderate difficulty level. The more color and the larger the pixel, the more difficult it is. So if this is your first macrame pixel, maybe try something a little smaller. But if you are very crafty and you know yourself well, then this is probably okay, because it is just one knot over and over and over again. Definitely don't attempt something like this behind me. That is extreme difficult. All right, let's get started.
Before we get into it, let's go over some of the supplies. You will need single strand cotton rope, and I'm using 3.35 millimeter, but 4 millimeter is also all right. Sharp scissors to cut your rope, a 12-inch wooden dowel to work off of, and we're going to be using medium worsted weight yarn to tie our knots around our rope. Oh, and don't forget you're going to need the grid pattern. I'll leave it on the screen now. Be sure to take a screenshot. Alright, let's officially get started. On our 12-inch wooden dowel, we're going to attach all 22 cords using a lark's head knot. So working with your first strand, you want to fold it in half to find the center. And with that center loop, you want to place that behind your wooden dowel. And then with your long tail ends, you want to thread that through the loop. That is how you tie a lark's head knot. So let's skip ahead and tie the rest of them. Alright, let's take a look at our grid pattern. We're going to start in the top left corner and work our way all the way towards the top right. And all the colors for this row is the background color. You can use whatever color you like, but for me, I decided to use navy. And I'm using the brand Sheep G's Chunky Monkey. It is an acrylic yarn. So go ahead and snip off a long strand of your yarn. And with the short tail end, you want to place that behind your first strand of rope, with the short tail end on your left and the long tail end on your right. With the long tail end, you want to make a loop and then wrap that long tail end around and behind your rope and through the loop. This is called a half hitch. So to complete your second half hitch, you want to repeat the same thing. So make a loop on your right, wrap your long tail end around and through the loop. Cinch up the slack, but not too tight, because you want to be able to slide your knot all the way up to the top. Then go ahead and tighten your knot and adjust your lark's head knot as well. And that is how you tie a vertical double half hitch knot. Alright, let me show you one more time, because the first knot always looks a little bit different than the rest. So what you want to do is you want to place your yarn behind the next strand of rope, make a loop on your right, wrap your tail end around and through the loop, cinch up all the way to the top this time, and repeat one more time by making a loop on your right, wrapping your long tail end around and through the loop. Alright, so this is basically it for the first row, so let's work our way all the way across to the very end. Alright, so you should have a total of 44 vertical double half hitch knots all the way across the top. And I like to highlight each row as I complete them. So let's refer back to our grid pattern. We went all the way across the very top. Now for the second row, we need to go back in the opposite direction. And as you can see, we need to change colors right here at the top of our first star. The first thing I like to do is to count where we change our color. So we have 9 knots in the navy on our second row, and then the 10th knot will be yellow. I like to place our color change up and out of the way. That way I don't get overzealous and accidentally tie that one in navy as well. Now, to tie your knots in the opposite direction, you want to take the same navy cord and place it behind your last strand of rope. Make a loop on your left hand side this time. Wrap your long tail end around and through the loop and repeat. So it's the same thing, but we're going in reverse. Okay, so let's tie these 9 vertical double half hitch knots in navy, and then I'll show you what to do when you want to switch to a different color. Alright, so grab your yellow yarn and snip off a very long strand. Bring down that strand of white cord, and we're going to attach our yellow just like we did at the start, only this time we're going in reverse. So our short tail end is going to be on the right this time, not the left. So place your yellow behind your cord with your short tail end on the right and the long on the left. Make a loop on your left, wrap your long tail end around and through the loop, and repeat one more time. But don't cinch it up too tight because again, you want to be able to slide it all the way up to the top. Once you slide your knot all the way up to the top, then you can go ahead and make your adjustments. Now for this pattern, we need to switch immediately back to our navy. So to do that, place your yellow behind your work, grab that same navy strand of yarn, run it underneath your white cord but on top of your yellow. You can go ahead and bring back down your white filler and then carry on tying your vertical double half hitch knots just the same as you were before. So essentially all we're doing is running our yarn behind our work, and you'll find you'll have a little bit of a stitch in the back. Now as you're working, you'll find that you'll run out of length of your working cord. So when that happens, you want to attach it just like the same way we did at the start and when we switched to the yellow. This is why in my patterns you'll find that I don't give specific lengths for your working cord because it really doesn't matter. You'll always attach a new piece as you need. However, personally, I do prefer to work with my arm span's length, which is roughly about 60 inches. But that is my personal preference. You do what's comfortable for you because my arm span is what's comfortable for me. I find that it's long enough to get a lot of knots tied, but not too long where I'm constantly pulling my yarn through that loop. Alright, so let's carry on tying our vertical double half hitch knots, zigzagging back and forth all the way down our grid pattern. Alright, once you're finished your work, admire it for a moment, and then it's time to flip it over and clean up the mess on the back. Now, don't worry, it doesn't take nearly as long as tying all those vertical double half hitch knots. Now, there's a few ways to do this, but what I like to do is the most simplest way, and that is grab any 2 strands that are close together, and then just tie a regular double overhand knot and then snip off the excess yarn. And that's it. You want to work your way all the way through the back of your wall hanging, tying double overhand knots and snipping off the excess. Now, the more seamless way to do it is to actually take a tapestry needle and weave in all the ends, but that takes far too long for me. But the super professional way is to actually add a signature and backing. I don't normally add a backing to wall hangings that are of this size, but when I have a much larger one that's more detailed, I do like to professionally add the backing to it. It makes it feel much more like a piece of art. Now, if you're curious on how I do that, click on the video on the screen now, and I'll see you over there.